Selectmen meeting, July 15th, 2004. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't actually have a copy of our agenda in front of us, but this meeting was a special meeting called to discuss, I guess we could call it pending litigation, or litigation that was put in today by the Starwood Company concerning the South Shore, Tri-Town, Starwood, Southfield area. We did invite tonight developers from Starwood to attend. We received an email tonight, earlier this afternoon, saying thank you for the invitation, but they would not be able to attend the meeting. They basically laid out that the legislation has been given to us a little while ago, and that we should basically act upon the legislation that they passed. They did recommend that we follow the precedent set by neighboring towns on how to develop a successful partnership by meeting an executive session or with the designees of the town to discuss the proposed legislation, benefits to the town of Abington, and negotiate an agreement. And what that refers to is that the towns of Weymouth and just as recently as last night, the town of Rockland voted to agree with the legislation that was presented by Starwood. Weymouth, I think the Mayor Kay, approved it last Thursday night, I believe. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the town council there does not have to approve it, but I think that they either are going to or have. And last night, the Board of Selectmen, 4 members present, voted to an agreement also. Their individual agreements, I think, is basically endorsing the legislation with a few little exceptions that they wanted for their own town. So the reason that I've asked for this meeting is to see what the town of Abington and the Board of Selectmen would like to do in this regard. The way I see it, and if anybody disagrees with me, please, after I'm done, but I see 2 options. The option is do nothing, which we've done so far, which we thought that other towns were going to do, but then they have changed their minds, or we meet with Starwood and try to come up with our own language, our own, agree to their legislation with the concerns of Abington factored in. So I would welcome many members of the board to, if they have any discussions. I know that myself and some of the other members of the board, and I actually thank Tom. He went to the Rockland meeting last night. I saw him on camera. I was watching the meeting. It was a very interesting meeting. They did not take any requests or any comment from the audience, which I'm willing to do tonight, only because there's only one person in the audience, but that's a moot point. We also have tonight, in case we need some help, we have Town Council Lauren Goldberg here to help us, and of course our Town Manager Rick. So I'm going to open it up to the members of the board and see if they have any feelings or any comments that they'd like to add. It's a very complicated issue, and Joe Shea knows better than any of us here, but I mean, it's been going on for years and years, and now it's suddenly being rushed into things, and there's deadlines, and these aren't false deadlines, these are actual deadlines. Supposedly by the end of the month, they are going to vote on the legislation, so I think we have to act. That's why this special meeting is happening tonight. But members?
I'll start. I would think we should probably take up Starwood on their offer to sit down with representatives from the town. Based on my watching the meeting last night and what I've read in the paper about Weymouth and Rockland and the legislation, I think in all likelihood this piece of legislation may be amended slightly but is going to pass. And if that's the case, I think we need to sit down and see if there's some way we can come to an agreement to do what's best for Abington, because that is certainly what has happened now with Weymouth and with Rockland. At one point we were all in this together, but somewhere down the line that kind of has gone by the wayside, and now we're all on our own. So being on our own, I think we need to sit down with representatives from Starwood and see if there's a possibility that we can come to an agreement. There are things, I've read through the legislation, there are things in there that I'm not happy about. I know we have only recently received it, so we haven't been able to go over it in detail. I don't think town council has had a chance to review it in detail, or Rick either. So obviously we'd want them to take a look at it and give us their advice on what they think may need to be tweaked in there. I'm also not happy with Rockland's memorandum of agreement. I think, Tom, you agree on that as far as a few things in there, and I'll let you speak to that. But I think, at least at this point, I think we need to sit down with representatives from Starwood and see what we can't come up with. And if we can't come up with anything, that's fine too, but I think we should at least make the attempt.
Tom?
Yeah, and I would concur with Andy. I think we should meet. I don't think discussing this, privately is out of the realm of what we should be doing. I would agree. I know we got the legislation, but again, I'm not sure if that's the final or if this was something proposed. I'd like to get the final legislation, and I think Tri-Town provided us a synopsis of each of the, so I think that would be positive. I will say in attending the meeting last night, I got to say, for me personally, and I think anybody that looks at this objectively or from a business viewpoint, this play is all about services, specifically water and sewer services. If you look at this memorandum of agreement, to kind of put it in a nutshell, is that Starwoods is basically paying Rockland $1 million. And in return, Rockland is going to provide them, or at least the board of Selectmen thinks they're going to provide them adequate water supply and wastewater treatment capacity. And I think as this board, and I think others have found out today, that's really not the case. I would report that the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks Superintendent came out about 3 o'clock today and specifically said that is not the case. There hasn't been any discussions, there hasn't been any sort of approval to basically take our water supply, which is Great Sandy Pond and Hingham Reservoir, and pump out of it to basically fulfill Rockland's portion of Southfield. And also my understanding is it's not a couple of houses. I think when that was going to be fully built out, granted some is in Weymouth, but there are going to be another 6,000 to 7,000 residents. So to me, that's my biggest concern. I think Rockland jumped the gun. I can understand, everybody broke rank of Weymouth, and Rockland did, where I think we would have been much better if we had, maintained rank, because I think it's a common interest that we all have, and I think we do better collectively in negotiating with Starwood. But at this point, it really got to go to the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks to basically get water. And the other thing I guess I would say is, right now, it's my understanding is we don't have water to give. We've got a permit from the DEP to pump about 2.29 million gallons a day. And right now, as we know, when Superintendent Callahan came in a couple of months, we're pumping 2.59 million gallons. Now, they have applied to the DEP, they being the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks, to increase that pumping capacity. But again, I think in trying to represent the interest of Abington, and I think to a large degree Rockland, what does that mean if, and how much gallonage are they going to be pumping in there? I think there's some questions like that need to be answered. So, as it has been from the beginning, I think it's all about water and sewer rights, and I would say from a mitigation viewpoint, just my own sort of feeling is, initially, when we talked to Starwoods, they were going to build a sewer treatment plant over there, of which they felt it was going to cost $12 million. They didn't have water rights, my understanding, from the MWRA. They had some distribution issues that were going to cost quite a bit of money. And for me, $1 million to secure water and sewer rights, I think that is way too low, because, that right to any developer, whether it's Starwoods or they sell that right, I think is worth quite a bit. And the other thing is, if you look at Abington's rates, I think the MWRA for the people in Weymouth now are paying 3 times what Abington and Rockland residents pay for water, and I'd want to know what the implications would be if we're pumping more water over there. Does that mean our overall rates are going up? So, long story short, for me, it's about mitigation and talking to Starwoods, but it's also about the water rights, to that portion of the base.
All right, do you have anything to?
Yes, I mean, I agree. At this point, everything that I have read indicates that the submission to the legislation has happened. Like this, the new plan has been submitted, and it would appear from everything that I'm reading that with Weymouth and Rockland on board, there's a very good chance that this is going to move forward if, in fact, it gets taken up by the legislature by July 31st, which, of course, here we are on the 15th already. So I agree that at this point we should try to make some opportunity to meet with Starwoods and their representatives to at least try to secure Abington's interest in this, whatever that is. I mean, I have a handful of questions that if they were here tonight, that I would have liked to have asked them. Some of which is somewhat covered in the draft documents that we've received. As Tom said, as far as like providing water, but then there's the sewer part of it too. And there's been a lot of discussion about would a potential sewer treatment plant exist on the Abington side of things. I think we'd want to talk about that. I don't know if they would make a commitment to that or not at this point, but there's that. And again, where is the water supposedly coming from? From what I understood, there's probably some outstanding bills that Starwood hadn't paid either. I'd want to know how that is being handled. There's discussion in here about the Parkway and how that, during the legislation, that that may become, something that the Commonwealth takes over, the $40 million debt or something on the Parkway over there so anyway, there were some questions that I had too. So I would agree that as things stand right now, we should endeavor to meet with them, see what we can do to protect Abington's rights or Abington's interest in this. And and I know that we're getting very rushed as far as time goes. So it would have been nice of them if they would be here. I can understand if they don't want to, but yeah, I'd absolutely support that we need to. If everyone else has now gone individually and met with them, I think we need to do the same.
Okay. Just so everybody, I play to the TV sometimes, this whole legislation, there's existing legislation now that Tri-Town is operating under, and Starwood has proposed legislation. I say proposed, but in reality, I think they presented it today. And some of the things that I want to ask them tonight the impact of some of the changes that they are recommending and what the impacts to Abington would be. We're not going to have the opportunity to ask them tonight, so if we meet with them or representatives of our board meet with them, I'd like to ask them. But some of the big issues that I feel affect the Abington are zoning changes. Before, all three towns would have to approve any zoning change in Southfield. Now what's going to happen is if there's a zoning change in the property that it was in Abington, Abington has the right to approve that zoning change, and the other two towns will just have to abide by that. So that's a big thing. And one of the biggest things I feel is that before there was going to be services on Southfield, in other words, there would be police and fire protection, ambulance service, that sort of stuff, DPW. Now, each town is responsible for their own property. So in other words, if there is an accident on the road in Rockland, then Rockland has to come there and take care of that. A pothole in Weymouth, that has to take care of it. And if there's a fire in Abington, we're going to have to go down, we have to go through Weymouth to get to that part of the Abington property. So that's another issue that it has a great deal, a great effect on our town individually. One of the biggest things, though, I feel is that the town of Abington, the property on the old base was basically going to be used for a golf course, and that's the only thing that was going to be on the Abington property. And Starwood, although vaguely at the first meeting they said they had no plans, it's pretty clear that they're not going to put a golf course. And in the original agreement, there was a $1 million penalty for not putting in the golf course, but they're waiving that. So they no longer have to pay the $1 million penalty for failure to build a golf course, and they're not going to build a golf course. And that affects our town in that the golf course, and there were some other things too besides the golf course. I know it sounds crazy, but there was a skating pond, cross-country skiing, that sort of stuff that was going to be on Abington's property, and that we could have taxed that as commercial, and now we are not going to see the tax revenue for that. It's still going to be open space. So that's going to affect the money coming to Abington quite a bit. So I think that those issues, along with traffic, and I know I've been told by members of this board and other people, there were going to be traffic anyways, but, you know, I think the traffic impacts are greatly going to affect the town of Abington, and that's going to be even clearer the end of next year when the Route 18 widening project is going to come into effect. There's going to be capital costs involved in the traffic and the volume, and I don't know if a traffic study was done. I'm assuming there was one done, but that was a long time ago. Maybe we should look into doing another one of those. I spoke on public safety. Now we're going to have to pay for any public safety on Abington's portion of that property. There's going to be, we know that if there's a fire anywhere on Southfield, Abington's going to be called, even if it's not in the Abington property, for mutual aid, so there's that additional cost. I am concerned about the loss of tax revenue. And the other issue too now is that in some of the plans by Starwood on Abington property right near the Weymouth line, there was talk about the water treatment plant for sewage, you know, treat sewage into water treatment, I think. And I'd like to know more about that. Is that going to happen? And if that happens, I believe that our boards are going to have to change the zone. They're going to have to come before our zoning board and other boards in town to get approval. So I think that's something that's important. One of the biggest concerns, too, that I just failed to mention right here, and this is about representation. Right now, it's a 5-member board, and we know that at one of our last meetings, we appointed our 1 member. And now the plan is to be a 9-member board, and there will still be 1 Abington member. So we went from 20% of the vote and the representation to, what's 1 out of 9? 12%. And the way it works is Weymouth basically has 5 votes, so 5 out of the 9 votes, and that doesn't seem very fair to me. So that's something, that was a concern with Rockland too, but I don't think they included it in their draft, but they spoke about it. So I guess that's all I really have to say right now, but I'd just like to maybe see some, when we meet with Starwood to talk about some legislative amendments that maybe can give Abington maybe a little louder voice in the whole process and the whole thing that's going up there at Starwood. So, Andy?
I agree. I think we do need to push for a louder voice. 1 out of 9 is certainly a lot less than 1 out of 5, but buried in here also, there are some kind of hidden costs that all 3 towns are going to incur once the legislation passes. If it passes, then each town is going to be taxing whatever portion of the land lies within their town. The town is going to have to collect taxes, the regular real estate tax for the town, but also a special tax for Southfield, process that, and then return whatever the Southfield portion is to Southfield. Those are going to be additional administrative costs, so I would, if you do sit down with Starwood, I would ask you to raise those concerns also, and other administrative costs are going to be affected as a result, and they should be picking those up. That shouldn't be something that the town of Abington should have to incur on a yearly or a quarterly basis, in my opinion.
Tom?
Yeah, that's a good point, and Kenny, you know, as far as hidden cost, I know Rockland last night was concerned with little things that are in there. I think the chairman of their open space committee was concerned that the legislation basically said that if you had some sort of need to remove and repair any infrastructure like the concrete, you know, and the developer wasn't developing anything there, then the town would be responsible for doing that if it was required. So there's some little gotchas like that I think we need to find out a little bit more about. As far as the board makeup, one of Rockland's concern, as I understood it, is Rockland's got 2 members now. They wanted to change the legislation so that instead of having 2 members from the existing Southfield, they wanted 1 from the Rockland section, which would give them 3 votes. So you're right, our voice is getting watered down in this. And the other thing, Rick, is I don't know, I know at some time, my understanding, and again, I haven't really read it in depth, but I thought as part of the legislation that the state's going to assume the payments for the bond.
For the parkway.
For the parkway, excuse me, that's right.
That's correct, that's part of the legislation.
Right. But if that didn't go, does Abington have any risk? Because I believe there was, what, $12 million in principal, not including the interest that's still outstanding. If that didn't go through, was Abington got risk that, along with the other two towns, they would be responsible for those debt payments?
I do not believe that Abington has any risk, as none of the parkway is in Abington. We are not a party to paying any of those debts at this time. That being said, I believe, I would find it hard to believe that that would be the issue that holds up this legislation, but I think it presents significant problems, as, you know, for Weymouth and Rockland potentially. We are a little bit more insulated from that particular issue.
I'm not, make one point too, and we keep talking about this proposed legislation like it's all bad. There are some good points to it. I mean, and I do think that it will probably, in the end, spur some growth up there and jumpstart the project. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that it's all bad things. And obviously, I would hope that our neighbors in Weymouth and Rockland, saw some good in it and they endorsed it for the reasons that, that there are some good parts of it. So I want to make that clear, that it's not all terrible. And I know that they probably would like to have Abington's endorsement because, we could kind of, I don't know if we could stop it, but we could kind of really drag our feet and kind of scream really loud. What was the term that Kevin Donovan used to use? Squeal like a, he made some kind of, he's got the animal, so he used to make the comments, but we could probably put up a little bit of a fight, but does anybody on the board have anything else to add?
I was just going to say, the other thing too, I agree, I don't want it to come off like we're absolute, I don't know whether we're for it or not at this point, but, for those that are living in Southfield, I'm sure they would like to see some kind of movement, because it's been quite a period of time where things have been very stagnant and on hold, and, and they bought property there. They invested, in their future there, and I think if it is determined that this is the best deal that can be made at this time, I think just the moving forward is probably the best take away from it.
I recognize Joe Shea, if you want to come up to the...
Joseph Shea, 3 Wyman Road, Abington's Representative Advisory Board. I've been involved in this project since 1990. I was on the Regional Planning Committee. First, I think we do need to meet with Starwood and discuss what is in this for Abington. They have given $1 million, as Maureen said, they've given $1 million to Rockland. If that's for the water, as appears to be the case, likely the case, then why don't we get $1 million? We should get $1 million. It's our water as well as Rockland's water. It's not just water. I think the biggest issue there is the water even available.
I was going to say, Joe, I'm not sure the water's even there to give, so that's...
What did Rockland get $1 million for? Although it's not $1 million up front, it's $1 million spread over 10 years.
Well, actually, it's mitigation, isn't it? Isn't that what it's called? Mitigation, yes.
Okay, so what are they offering us? I have several questions. I just saw the documents today. There's been, and I think we have been trying to get documents from them, and we have not had any success. A couple of things concern me. One is we say the deadline. The deadline is imposed by the developer. No one came back and said the state legislature wants this. The developer said we want new legislation starting in fiscal year 15. So the developer set their own deadline. So we're jumping through the hoop set up by the developer, which to me is, and I think Rick has referred to this before, is not the way things are supposed to go. Number two, as Maureen mentioned, it's been on hold. Well, part of that is the recent impression I've got. The master developer, Starwood, has not done anything for development in the past year. So at least that is part of the problem we are dealing with, that they basically have sat on their hands and said, we want a new legislation, and then we will develop a new plan. We don't know what their plan is yet. They have basically said they're not going to vote. Several concerns I have, just going through the document quickly. One is obviously the water. And also part of the overall problem I have is just the fact that they have refused. Tom, when do you think the Rockland Board of Selectmen saw the MOA?
Do I think they saw it?
Yeah. Much
I
before
think
that
it was
thing.
fairly quickly. I don't think they would been sitting on it for a month or so. I think that
So-
it just evolved over the last week or two, but I don't have any way to really know.
That, it concerns me that documents of this importance are being rushed through by the developer. and basically given, if I'm correct, the town manager and the legal counsel have not had a chance to review these two documents, documents in any degree, have we?
No, these just came today, you're correct, Joe. Right, and we were not privy to any draft, and with regard to the legislation itself, we haven't had a chance to see if it's, how close it is to earlier drafts. So it's been suggested that, well, it's, somebody could criticize us for not having reviewed the earlier drafts, but on the other hand, until you actually read this, you don't know if it's reflective of those drafts yet.
One thing that in the memorandum agreement that disturbs me is the sixth item on the first page. Whereas a master developer in Rockland agree it will be desirable for the new act to be enacted in law in substantially the form attached to this agreement's Exhibit A, which form would, among other things, conditionally obligate master developer to assume primary responsibility for procuring and financing the water supply and waste treatment capacity required for the project. The copy of the legislation attached is May 30th. They haven't been meeting consistently with Weymouth since then. What did Weymouth agree to? Is this copy of the legislation even current? And the words in substantially the form attached doesn't mean we're agreeing to something we have in front of us. It's basically who decides what's substantially. To some degree, it basically says we're agreeing to something, but it's nothing specifically saying what it is. That concerns me. One thing else on the water and water supply. My understanding is Starwood will work on paying for the water and paying for the treatment plants. The connectivity, the cost is still going to be absorbed by Southfield residents in one way or other. Somebody. Starwood is not, those costs are going to get referred back. The question is, who are they going to go back to? Is it the Southfield residents, the Southfield businesses that go in, or will it be coming back to the residents in some way? Somebody mentioned that. We'll be going back to the Abington water, Rockland water users. I am very concerned about the comment last night that the Rockland Selectmen did not basically start off by saying there'll be no public comments. I guess some public comments were allowed, but I think that is a very dangerous thing to do on something of this important, is not to allow the public to comment at that point before they agree to an agreement. Other issues, I say, going through it, and there's a whole series of them, and I think we need to do more review. But we do need to meet with them. We don't have any choice. I think there is a good chance that the legislature, for whatever reason, feels this is a great idea to do it right now. Some of the other issues I had, zoning changes. Kenny, you mentioned zoning changes, that it has to be approved only by the town. The original version I saw last winter said major zoning changes have to be approved by the individual town. Minor changes only by the board of directors.
That's still the same.
Yep.
Joe.
Who defines what is what?
There is a definition of what is major and what is minor, but
Is it conclusive? Is
I
it
don't-
definite? I mean, that's a worry to me.
I agree.
I mean, that could mean somebody could go in and make a change. So there's also something in that wording. I believe it said that when they presented a zoning change to a town, it was either pass it or don't pass it. You have no right to amend it. I mean, to me, that is a major problem. We right now have a right to modify zoning articles, if I'm correct, in the town. That's a major problem. The services, we're gonna get charged for services. How many, we don't know, we're gonna have to read this on. But we will get revenue back. But the revenue from Abington, from each town, is gonna be based on what the value of the land that they have there. What is the value of the land we have, how much is gonna be paid? Actually, for Rockland, that could be much more major an issue. Rockland is 42% of the base. How much are they gonna get charged for fire, police, and other services? And how much are they gonna be getting back? That's why I'm to some degree amazed that Rockland agreed to this. Recreation. It was mentioned that there was something in here that says Rockland can develop recreational facilities on the base, on Southfield land, at a discount. The original plans called for that to be done by the master developer. The master developer would build it and assume charge who was using it for use, but this is obviously much more favorable to the master developer.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? You're speaking upon Rockland's memorandum of
Right.
agreement, right? I mean,
But the announcing on the recreation was already in their first version of the legislation I saw. They basically said, we're not going to do the recreation facilities.
because frankly, at this point, I mean, except for the water issue, Rockland is on their own now, that's the way I look at it, you know? I mean, we've got to come up with our own memorandum of agreement if we decide to do that. Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, there's other issues I can see, you know, I mean, I've had before, I don't know how many are valid or how many is invalid at this point here. And I think one of the concerns I have is Starwood has purposely, I think, not met with Abington or Rockland up until now. They got Weymouth agreement and basically said, basically, what the impression is you don't have a choice. I know they've met with individuals. They've met with the mayor or the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Rockland. They met with other people on the Weymouth Town Council. Unfortunately, to me, that is not how a process like this should go. It should be done in open meetings so the public can hear it. And I don't think that's what has happened here. I mean, we may have to live with it. I would suggest what we do is meet with them, the memorandum, but also develop our own list of concerns, just for our own point of view. We basically said the town meeting voted. We did not want to do any change to us back to town meeting. I know Rockland's going to have a town meeting. We may need to schedule one of our own. I mean, I don't know what, but to be honest with you, I don't know what difference it's going to make, because, you know, but I would do it. I would just do it for the sake, and I would also send the bill for the town meeting to start with.
Well, that's a good point, because there's another couple of provisions in here that we have to call town meetings if certain zoning changes are enacted and that sort of thing, and who's going to get billed for that but the town of Abington? So those are more of those hidden costs that are going to be...
Well, I think that's what we need, a thorough review of this.
Yeah,
And
and
I
that's
think we
what
need a
these
thorough
guys-
review by any boards that may be concerned in this town. It may be zoning, it may be other boards. We may need to take a look at this and see what are we getting into.
Can I ask you a question, Joe?
Yes.
How many members are on the advisory committee?
I think it's, what's 11?
11.
No,
So that's staying at 11.
as far as I know.
It-
I mean, to be honest with you, when I read before, I really couldn't find much reference to the advisory board. I
There is
don't know
one,
if it's-
there is, it's pretty detailed, except it doesn't tell you what the term of office is of the members who are going to be serving. So is there a term now?
I don't think so.
There isn't? No, okay. That might be something you want to look at, too, because it's an unlimited term the way it reads now.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, that's how the original law was set up. I am concerned about, what the costs in the water are going to be. Somebody mentioned the fact that MRWRA pays substantially more. Are you going to end up with the Weymouth people getting the rate for the MWRA plus the extra charge going in for going through Southfield? Or is it going, or Starwoods, or is it going to be a blended rate? If it's a blended rate, then what does that do to us? I mean, I think one thing you do need to, is a joint meeting with the waterworks, because they're basically, if you, Dan Callahan, from what it was said it's 3 o'clock, we don't have the capacity.
He was in here, like you said,
Yeah.
what, a few months ago and told us the exact
Yeah.
same thing.
I mean, I have a lot of concerns. I mean, I don't know how many of them are still valid or invalid. I mean, I wish we weren't in this situation. I wish everybody had held off and gave us a year to work with them. I think one of the problems with this is, in my personal opinion, and my personal opinion only, Starwood had no intention of working with Abington and Rockland. That's my personal opinion.
At least not in public.
No, and as far as I'm concerned, to meet with people privately is not the way something like this should be done. Unless that person has been authorized by the board to meet with them, unless there's some kind of reporting back to the system, even if it has to be an executive session. But just to say, people are going to go talk to them individually, especially if it's verbal.
Well, that has not
When
happened.
there's no way to
That
compare-
hasn't happened in this town, so.
And the other question I would say is, what is Weymouth's agreement? Weymouth supposedly has 26 conditions they've agreed to. What's in the Weymouth agreement?
I think we
Can't-
received that today, too.
Well, we should review that and see if there's something in there we need to take a look at.
It's sent to everybody?
I think so. I got it.
And as far as
Kevin sent that out, I thought,
as far as,
last week.
Stopped reading my
and one
emails.
thing,
I stopped reading my emails at 4:30.
one thing that is in here that's, that is to me still a concern, they are removing any caps on development based on the commercial development. The respective developments, the residential development is no longer tied to commercial. That gives me a concern. Originally it's going to be 2 million. Now there's all talk about it's be the minimum, 900,000. In my opinion, based on all my experience, a lot more residential you get up there, the more it is not going to pay for itself in the long run. I think everybody's experience was heavily residential properties do not pay for themselves in the long run. So somebody is going to end up eating the costs. Abington is 12%. I don't know if between, we're gonna end up eating some of the 12% of total cost, or what's it's gonna be. But, all right, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Any other questions?
All right. Board members, everything to say? What's that?
No, I
We'll recognize Chris Aiello, who is our representative on the Board of Directors.
Chris Aiello, 11 Hunts Pond Lane. I'm also the Abington representative on the Tri-Town Board of Directors. I share many of the same concerns that Joe has. The last thing Joe mentioned is the stopgap for the residential commercial development. Right now, commercial development is tied to the amount of residential you have, and that's been removed. And my concern is that they could just build out all the residential and leave. And how do you enforce that? And to me, that's, as an Abington resident, that's my biggest concern, having a giant housing development in there. But, the good news is for Abington residents is our exposure to all of this is minimal. I wouldn't want to, Rockland, I think, got the shaft in this deal. I don't know why Ed Kimball supported it. I don't know why the Rockland Selectmen voted in favor of it without even reading it, and they had no right to promise Starwood any water because they don't control the water supply, and the capacity's not there, like you said. When I was on the Abington Water Board, we requested to the DEP that we increase our withdrawal permit by 500,000 gallons. And when I left in last I heard in May, that permit request was still floating out there in the DEP process. So, but there's no capacity. The only role that Abington Rockland could play in supplying Starwood or Southfield with water would be to hook up to the desalinization source. And that's a long process. That's got to go through the DEP. That requires several DEP permits. Brockton has to be on board. It has to go from the Taunton River Basin to Brockton to Abington to Rockland. So it's a long process. So.
Just, Chris, when you're on there, again, the application, the DEP was to increase the pumping capacity.
Correct.
In effect, our two reservoirs, Great Sandy and Hingham. There wasn't any plan to create additional water sources.
No, there was talk about drilling an additional well on Myers Avenue.
Okay.
Okay, but after looking into that, it wasn't going to create the capacity that they needed.
Right.
Not anywhere near. Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks, it's Rockland. So we felt a certain obligation to see what we could do to supply the Rockland portion of Southfield with water because it's part of Rockland. But we just don't have the capacity.
Right. So just for the residents, so the way I understand it, there's the Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks, 3 members from Abington, 3 members from Rockland. You meet jointly when there's discussion on the water supply. Right?
Yep.
But then, when it gets to distribution, Abington sort of breaks off and
Yeah.
worries about our
Both boards
distribution.
meet together. Okay, 3 and 3 meet together,
Right.
and they have a joint meeting, and then one has an Abington meeting. The Abington guys have an Abington business-only meeting,
Right.
and the Rockland guys have a Rockland business-only meeting.
So I guess my question is, when you look at all this, shouldn't Starwoods or the developer be negotiating with the Abington Rockland Joint Water
Yeah, they should.
Commissioners
They should.
for
And I guess
rights to
before I got on
supply?
the board, Dan Callahan had met with L&R, and I don't know what the result of those meetings were.
Right. Do you know if Rockland has done any infrastructure improvements over there? I thought I heard Chairman Kimball last night, and I'm not familiar with, on Reservoir Drive, there was some sort of
Big pipe.
infrastructure improvements for distribution into Southfield. Now, I don't know if the developer paid for that, the state paid for that, or what.
Yeah, no, I heard the same thing, but I can't confirm it. I don't know who paid for it.
Are you concerned that the Rockland portion is trying to
Well, what-
monopolize the distribution of water to the
Well,
Southfield?
frankly, last night, I was just flabbergasted, sitting there, saying, how can they sign this? I didn't think, unless they cut a deal with the Rockland, 3 members, to basically provide a water supply. I thought it had to be jointly with Abington and Rockland, and obviously, they either didn't do their homework, or they're just trying to signal to the state and the legislatures to basically, they're in favor of it. I mean, I think that's what that show was about last night, to try to fast-track that legislation, but it just made me nervous that Rockland could go and basically use the water supply as they saw fit. Or frankly, if I'm a Rockland resident, Abington could do the same. Let's say we had a 500-unit residential development. That means our 3 members could basically say, go. I'd be concerned if I was Rockland, but.
I don't think that's the case.
You know
No,
what-
it is not the case, based
Tom.
on what Dan wrote today.
Even if the majority of the Rockland Abington commissioners were on board with it, it still has to go through the DEP, and the capacity has to be there.
Yeah.
So you can take any vote you want, at a meeting, but you can't create the water that's not there.
And the other thing, I found out, it's not widely publicized, maybe it is, but, we have a restriction now. I think we have for a while, it's handhold hoses, and it's odd and even days. Typically in the old days, you just put up signs around town, but it's for both Abington and Rockland. So to illustrate that point, there's not enough capacity at this
Yeah.
point.
We're overdrawing our permit
Yeah,
now.
I know.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, Rockland Selectmen had no right to promise water to Southfield.
They're also promising sewage too, right?
Yeah, that's,
And I do have a sewer treatment plant there. I'm not sure if they have capacity there to.
I don't know either.
Or if they
But
have piping.
that was an interesting one to me, at first blush, that's their own deal, but then I think there's a portion of our
We
sewerage
have a small portion.
that goes to Rockland, and would that affect us, that, Rockland would come back and say you're out, and we're gonna bring Southfield in? I doubt that would happen, but it did lead me to believe that could happen. And again, just to illustrate, I think, Chris, you came last year, and you had done some good homework on Easton, when our former town manager was talking about building these, what was he called, not portable, but
No, they're,
wastewater treatment.
yeah, little mini treatment plants.
Yeah, and I think he went over to Easton, which they had done something similar.
Yeah, they
And
paid
the
big.
costs that you came back with were sort of astronomical. I
Yeah.
think he said it was like 12 million to build it, and that didn't include the maintenance. At the end of the day, you're probably looking.
For a very low capacity in sewer, it was something like 30,000 gallons a day.
So I'll make my point again. Even if Rockland Selectmen had the ability to do it, for $1 million, I mean, that
Sewer
right is,
connected.
Like
to
I-
me, from a business viewpoint, is worth
You look
a
at
lot of money.
what Rockland did is that they signed off an agreement that they only have 2 members out of 9 on the new board, so they're underrepresented on the new board, and they get no commercial development, none. Any commercial development in Rockland is at the discretion of the mayor of Weymouth. I mean, would you sign that deal?
I don't want to keep rehashing what Rockland agree with. I have no
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah, the thing is,
They wanted to, I think it's
They agreed to it.
important,
I don't
but the rest
think,
of it-
how can you support, this was dropped in everyone's inbox this afternoon
Right.
with summaries and revisions. I don't know how anyone can vote in favor of it tonight, and frankly, I don't think it makes much of a difference either way. This thing is going, it's going to be voted on by, it was given a docket number, it's going forward, it's probably going to be voted on by the 25th. It's got to be on the governor's desk, like 9 days before, this thing's going.
Is
So-
is there something you could follow up on? Did Senator Keenan, did he co-sponsor it?
No, Headland and Ron Mariano were the co-sponsors.
About.
Anybody else?
Diamond?
No, but I think there was a window there where more people could jump on, and that email was looking for people to,
Yeah, I saw that.
Nobody else jumped on?
I don't know, I just got the emails. So, that's it. Is that all?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Joe?
I have 2 things. First, one is, I would think, well, first said, and I think we'll discussion. I would think we should set up the meeting with Starwood, but at the same point, send a letter to our legislatures, specifically Keenan and Representative Dio, And also, the legislative leaders say, basically, there's still been no talk with us. We still don't know, they invite us to a meeting, but we don't know how, we just got a copy of the legislation. It was 2 weeks to go before the end of the session. We need time to review this. And number two, I think one crucial question is, how much are they looking for, what are they looking to give from Rockland? I mean, right now, we're already 300,000 gallons over our drawing limit. If we get 500,000, that will leave 200,000 to go to Southfield, assuming we have no need for water anywhere else for other developments. Does that mean all other developments in Abington and Rockland grind to a halt so the water can go to Southfield? And how much are they going to want? Is it open-ended? I mean, I think that's a crucial question. I mean, what are they specifically talking about on water and treatment? And what are the costs? If we do the desalination route, how much is that going to cost? And who's going to absorb it?
Just to answer your question, I was in contact with Representative Deal today, and he is aware, and whatever this board decides, he will bring that to the State House. So in other words, if we say we recommend it, he will vote that way, and if we're opposed to it, he will vote that way.
I would still suggest you might want both to send them a letter to them.
And I know that Senator Keenan was in contact with Rick today, and he's anxious to see what we're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, we may come to agreement, or something, I don't know, but I mean, I think right now, I mean, to say we're in favor of it, it's been said, would be, in favor of what?
No one said that, I don't think.
we haven't said that.
Oh, I know, but I think that's where Star Wars would like us to go.
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So why don't we, can we set up I don't want to call it a committee. Set up
Would it be a
a,
subcommittee?
no, I wouldn't even call it a subcommittee, maybe just a,
But we're paying
One-
we're paying someone in this room a
representative
lot
to
of
meet-
money,
one
maybe.
representative.
Representative to meet with Starwood along with the town manager.
With the assistance of the administration.
Should that be the
And a-
chairman?
I think it should be, especially since he's on vacation this week.
And with legal counsel, right?
I thought he was your friend.
So is that you would, the motion would be to authorize your chairman with the support of the town manager and town council to meet with representatives of Starwood?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
Hopefully this week, and
Very
then
good.
we can get,
And I missed who
Something
made
back
the
and-
motion. I think you started the motion. Tom kind of helped with the motion. I just...
I seconded.
You seconded the
Okay,
motion?
so Motion
Okay,
made and
thank you.
seconded.
All right.
I just, as I stated before, Lauren is here. Lauren, do you want to, are we doing the right thing here? Does that sound like a good motion, or?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do think that that makes the most sense to designate a single representative to meet with them, and then a report could be brought back to the full committee, and depending how far we're able to get this week, we can talk about what might make the most sense in terms of scheduling a meeting for the board to hear a report on the negotiation process and whatever proposal we're able to bring back, if any. I think as the chairman and I discussed earlier, it's possible that the process will go forward and there will be no way to arrive at a negotiated deal at this time, but at least this is a process for that purpose.
I think the other issue, too, is do we want to have town council look at the proposed legislation that got sent out to see, maybe just to look at it and see if they see any concerns that we may have missed and not touched upon at tonight's meeting? Does that make sense, or?
I would say yes. I probably would ask that if you could provide like a abbreviated or summary, comments on each section, that would be.
Yes. Think you have that for us tomorrow morning?
Sorry, I gotta go.
Chairman, I think just to try and find out if this is the current version.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, whatever the
Yeah,
version
yes,
is
yes.
that's been
We'll
filed.
submit it.
It's been filed, right? There's been filed.
Mr. Chairman, I assure you, I will make sure that we're dealing with the
Looking-
that the filed version. It'll probably be available online shortly regardless, but we can get it directly from the legislature tomorrow.
I would think after the second meeting at the most, we'll have an idea as to whether we'll have an agreement. So I'd like to schedule a meeting early next week, if that's agreeable to the board, just to
Update us.
update us and maybe, let you guys know what's going on, if that's all right.
That works for me.
And Rick's on vacation, I think, so good for you. Will the assistant town manager be back then?
Town council's not on vacation.
I'm not on vacation.
Do you get vacation?
I do. In theory.
Yeah,
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and I'd like to get work on this as early as tomorrow, if we can meet with Starwood tomorrow. Hopefully they'll buy lunch. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. I would like to make, we brought up a lot of issues that people had with the legislation and then the comparisons to Rockland and Weymouth. If individual members have some concerns that maybe weren't touched upon, if they want to remind me about some of the things they'd like me to talk about, some mitigation for different issues, or please email me. Same thing, Joe and Chris and anybody out there on TV. I don't know when this is going to play, probably after it's all said and done, but please email me, and I'll try to bring those concerns up. Rick and I will bring those concerns up before. Yes, Lauren?
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that if members of the board email you, that they email just you,
Yes,
and that they don't copy each other, so that we avoid any potential open meeting
Yeah,
laws.
that's the only way we do things around here.
That's what I like to
Send it to
hear.
Rick instead.
Okay.
Or it could be sent to Rick, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I would distribute to the chairman and town council. That would be fine.
Okay, Tom?
Just a point of clarification, I noticed that Water Superintendent Callahan sent to a group email called Abington Selectmen at abingtonmass.gov. I don't know if I have access to that, but I'm wondering, Rick, if you could check with our IT guy and see if that could be redistributed to each individual's email. Because, do you check that? Do you know how to?
No, what is
No,
that?
but I think that's where that email initially went to. I got a copy from another,
Yeah, I didn't
Remember in the
get a
community.
copy of it, so.
yeah.
get it.
But that's where he sent it, and I think there was something similar over in Rockland, but maybe they're set up to receive it, but,
We'll look into that.
Okay.
yeah. I don't know if you can redistribute it if,
I think this was the only thing on the agenda tonight, so I really can't talk about anything else, but I would like to bring up one thing. There is, and maybe I'm speaking out of school here, there's 2 openings on the Park and Rec Board that we will be appointing at our August 4th meeting, I believe. So if you're interested in one of those 2 positions on the Park and Rec, please go on the Abington website or contact our town manager. Yeah, so, does anybody else have anything else they want to discuss, or?
I always have a lot of things. but-
Go ahead. Yeah.
So you're going to let us know about a meeting? You're not going to set it today? You're going to let us know about a meeting for next week?
I'd like to get it done as early as possible. I'd like to get a meeting Monday night, if that's all right, agreeable with the board.
Why don't you wait and see what you get?
But we'd have to post it
You got, what, 48
till
hours?
Thursday, we have to post it Thursday. That's true, so if I know they won't meet with us this week, there's no sense having a meeting, all right. So plan on a meeting Monday night, but,
But you'll let us know definitely.
yes, I'll let you know individually. Oh, no, wait,
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.